Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Power Attack. My name's Paul, and this is my revised, qualified opinion on Devil May Cry 5. So on last Monday, I did a mini review of Devil May Cry 5. I just played the intro level and gave any opinion on how I felt about the game at the time, having had played every game in the series other than D-MC. This format wasn't quite how the series is meant to go, but I was kind of pressed for time. However, I have continued playing through the game. I beat it. Usually I ended up playing it for hours in a sitting, and I had the idea partway through of giving a more structured follow-up on how I feel about the game with some playthrough video I captured to illustrate what I mean. The short answer, for those of you who just want the short answer, it's pretty great. I put it probably roughly on par with Devil May Cry 4. I feel it gets just better enough at the end to barely push it past, I think. It does some things better than 4, and it does still have things that rub me the wrong way through the game. For context, my opinion is that DMC 3 is the one that I can just keep going back to playing over and over again, and I think it's probably overall the best. DMC 4 Special Edition is pretty great. It's probably my second favorite until now, especially for adding my favorite character in the series as a playable character once again. Vergil. DMC 1 is the classic that started the whole thing off, and it still handles well, but it's kind of hard to go back to it after playing like DMC 3 or later, and DMC 2 kind of barely feels like a DMC game. It's got Dante, but I can't even remember what happens. So, that being said, why do I think DMC 5 is, quoting myself, pretty great, end quote? Well, my opinion comes as a pretty strong fan of this series. Probably fanboyish, I admit. I've been waiting for an actual sequel to DMC 4, and like I said last time, D-MC doesn't count. So if you've never played a Devil May Cry game and are wondering if you should start here, I'll give you a slightly separate opinion. Sure, go right ahead. It's not the beginning of the Devil May Cry story, so if, for completion's sake, you want to play the story in order, start with DMC 3. It's amazing. It still holds up pretty well this day. The Steam port last I played kind of was wonky and needed Joy to Key to feel right on a controller, but it didn't take too much effort. The game, story, and gameplay still holds up great to this day. Especially if you like older games, using that loosely. This game came out in the mid-noughties, so games around that time, if that's your thing, will do great for you, in theory. However, this game, Devil May Cry 5, does something unique in the series that I've never seen before. It doesn't mean it's never been done, and I totally wouldn't be surprised if it has. I'm just not aware of it. This game gives you a quick rundown of pretty much everything in the Devil May Cry timeline up until the events of DMC 5. Now, this is my cousin, the other guy on the channel, telling me this because he watched it. I knew enough about the backstory that I didn't feel like I needed to. It even mentions the light novels, the manga, the anime, which is canon, and it's pretty damn good. I recommend it. I think Studio Madhouse may have done the animation, which did Hellsing, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, new to DMC, want to start here because it's shiny and new and looks pretty? Go for it. Now, back to how I feel about this game compared to the others. I don't mean which is better and why in a prioritized list, so much as I mean, does this game fit with what I've experienced in the rest of the games? And yes, it fits quite well. Very well, in fact. The combat feels almost exactly like what I remembered. Nero feels to me just like he did in DMC 4. Dante, when I finally got to Dante, it felt like home. Good old Dante. Rebellion, Ebony and Ivory, Swordmaster style, Trickster style, felt just like how I remember. Once I got Dante, I stuck with him every time the game gave me a character choice. He's the reason a lot of people, including myself, love Devil May Cry. He's a great character. His cockiness is kind of endearing, and he's got this ability to back up the wisecracks his mouth spouts out like a beautiful fountain of quips. Now, Nero is still Nero. He does mature toward the end of the story, which I liked. That was very good. Finally made him feel like he wasn't trying to just be young Dante. He fights, I think, mostly the same as in DMC4, but since his arm gets ripped off in the beginning, and that's not a spoiler, it's in the trailer, he can't perform the devil trigger mechanic anymore. He's just human, according to the demons in that universe, that don't understand that humans can't survive the beatings that Nero regularly takes. Nero now has a new robo-arm made by a girl who looks like she'd be my type, but is annoying and can't seem to decide what part of the South her accent is from. The new robo-arm mechanic is kind of equal parts interesting and weird. It has a magazine, as the game calls it, of different robo-arms that you can use to fight demons, each doing something slightly different. I think if you include the stuff in the deluxe edition, it felt like there were about a dozen different ones. They can still reach out and grab a demon for you to juggle as you please, like in DMC4, but now they do other things if you hit B or circle or whatever it is for you while not locked on. One of the funnier ones, in my opinion, is the Mega Man Buster, which is in the deluxe edition, which I felt compelled to buy, and I think it was worth it to me. For example, the Mega Man Buster, which is part of the deluxe edition, shoots little yellow lemon blasts. You can also hold B to shatter that arm and get it out of your magazine. It's gone. To perform an ultimate move, like it's holding B, and like for the Mega Man one, it's a big Kamehameha-like blast, and then you just move to the next arm in the magazine. Also, you can press another button, I think it was left bumper for Xbox controller, which is what I used, and it will shatter the arm to get you out of like certain boss attacks like a grab, and that was handy at times so you didn't take excessive damage. If there's one thing I wish it could do, is I wish you could have different arms in a magazine and freely rotate between them weapon-wise like you can with all of Dante's guns. That would have made that a lot more fun to me. The robo-arm can get kind of awkward to think about naturally in combat, at least for me. Some of them have proved super useful to me, though. Rawhide, I think, or whatever it's called, juggled pretty well. There's one that's like red and got sharp claws that grabs a demon and just chucks them, and it was one-hit killing tougher demons for me, at least on Devil Hunter difficulty. Now they've added another new playable character called V, and he's weird. He plays like a summoner class because he uses 3 different creatures he can summon, but you're playing a hack and slash game, so it's kind of weird. In my opinion, again, on Devil Hunter difficulty, which was the harder of the 2 available at the start, he trivializes a lot of fights. If I ever wanted to win pretty much any fight, all I had to do was just use his Devil Trigger ability, which you can buy abilities to make it even last longer, call out a massive golden thing called Nightmare, and then just mash on the X, Y, and B keys until everything died. Just play keep away yourself. It was trivial. There's even a point in the game where it goes back to the old trope from the other games, where you'd fight a bunch of the previous bosses over again before fighting the final boss. This time, though, it's only 3 fights and you have to use V. Side note, though, I love the way they put this trope back in. It didn't feel forced in universe like before. You just go through these weird portals and do the exact same fight over again, which felt kind of strange, like, well, how's he alive again? This time, it was part of some, like, illusion realm created by one of the other boss demons. So they were more or less ghost copies, and that made, I guess, reasonable enough sense in universe. The mechanic they use in those fights should be interesting, but it was still kind of too easy with V. He loses his 3 summons. One is a panther that does the melee attacks. One is a bird called Griffin that is basically Iago from Aladdin and shoots lightning bolts. And then you have the big golem Nightmare. So before each boss, you choose which one of your summons you get back. So I got the panther back first because I know in these games everything is always beatable via melee. guns can take forever, and the devil trigger is very temporary. So I decided to fight the Cavalier Angelo, because when I played against him as Dante, I murdered him pretty solidly. And again, with just the Panther, murdered him real solidly. Then I got the Nightmare back on the second boss, trivialized that fight 100%. And then on the third fight, it wasn't even a fight. It literally, by the time I summoned the Devil Trigger, maybe took 15 seconds. And that's not really my biggest problem with him. Like, I could just not play him if the game would let me. But he's also the living embodiment of r/I'm 14 and this is deep. He just wears all black, is covered in tattoos, and speaks in mysteries and poetry. He's so annoying. I hate him existing. I hated it even more when they gave him his backstory. I'll save that spoilery stuff for the end. I just thought it was... I guess it makes a bit of sense in universe, but it also seemed like the first time it had been done, so it felt really weird, and I don't know, I felt like it didn't make too much sense. Now, speaking of callbacks, like the, as I call it, the boss gauntlet, there was one glorious interaction and fight that made me so happy. I was filled with nostalgia. My face, metaphorically, lit up when I saw it. Dante walks into an icy cavern, and inside is a Cerberus. Cerberus was one of the most memorable bosses in the series. Dante's interaction with him in Devil May Cry 3 was that cocky Dante taunting Cerberus, making remarks about him wanting to go for a walk and the like. It was beautiful to see that again. Then I kicked the crap out of that three-headed puppy, and I saw even more beauty. They give you the weapon Cerberus from Devil May Cry 3. I was so happy. Not only that, but they kept with the tone of the series and introduced a new devil arm for Dante via cutscene. A lot of Nero's little arms are just... Nico is her name. Reaching over, like, behind the counter and going, "Hey, got a new thing for you," and placing it on the counter. Not really interesting. Dante gets cutscenes. They basically pre-played, note for note, the cutscene from DMC 3 when he got Cerberus that time. It was amazing. And that's another thing this game got right most of the time. The tone. It definitely feels like Devil May Cry. There's a fight that embodies the series to a T. There's Nero and V fighting angelic-looking demons in a church that's sliding down a hill towards a deep ravine. It is exactly the level of over-the-top action with a dash of camp needed for this series. There's also the notes of somber seriousness needed to bring the game back down, and they fit pretty well too. Just as well, they can transition back into that kind of camp rather well. A great example is V telling Trish his tragic backstory. He asks her what to do, and she only replies, and I quote, "I'm not your mommy, V," and walks away. The scenery looks like Devil May Cry. The music sounds like Devil May Cry, other than that horrid Dante fight theme. Thank Sparta for the ability to swap his music in the deluxe edition. That alone almost made it worth it. The characters feel like their old selves as well, with a kind of exception. And we're about to get spoilerific here, so if you want to remain ignorant of such things, particularly the end, the big, bad, evil guy, V, and all that, tune out now. It's fine. I'll still love you. For you, Devil May Cry fan, I say, get this. I paid full price for the deluxe edition, and I'm not any bit sorry. And I will usually find any way possible not to do that. It's great. Treat yourself. I think the extra stuff in the deluxe edition makes it more enjoyable, with the ability to swap fight music and get more goofy little robo-arms for Nero, like the Mega Man Buster or the totally It's Not a Vibrator Sweet Surrender. Spoiler time now. Back out now, or you lose all rights to complain. So, Vergil. This whole story is about Vergil. Remember how people thought he died in Devil May Cry 1 as Nilo Angelo? Yeah, well, he followed my rule of comic books and video games. They're not dead unless you see a body, sometimes not even then. Vergil stumbles back into existence, pretty much literally, rips off his son's demon arm, which is honestly in character. I don't expect Vergil to give a single crap about anyone, even his own son. He takes sport in trying to murder his twin. So he takes his magic demon katana out of said demon arm and just warps out of existing, muttering about not having much time. Okay, great, sounds like him so far. Much later down the line, we learn that V and Urizen are both actually Vergil. My buddy and I joked that this would be something silly and stupid that the game could do, and they actually did it. Vergil took the idea of a katana that could cut anything in two and took it to new, almost literal / spiritual levels, stabs himself with his own sword, Dante style, and split his human and demon halves apart. The human half goes on to act like a 14-year-old emo kid reciting poetry, talking in mysteries, and acting like he's going to fall over dead any moment, despite the game letting him do acrobatics worthy of Nightwing. Urizen is lazy, sits on his little bone throne, and just kind of exists menacingly while some mystical plan is allegedly coming to fruition. Pun not intended. He's a super boring big bad evil guy, only made interesting to me by the fact I kept waiting to see him be Vergil. Thank Ava that they get rid of this garbage after the third to last fight. The Demon Emperor himself, the Alpha and the Omega, as the game itself even calls him, Vergil, is reformed from his two boring reject trope halves and begins being Vergil. Exactly the attitude and language I remember from Devil May Cry 3 particularly. He even fights like in Devil May Cry 3. He was also the first boss in the game in a very long time that I felt gave me any trouble. It felt like playing Devil May Cry 3 again. It was so damn good. Then Nero arrives. He goes Super Saiyan, literally bitch slaps his dad and uncle, and proceeds to beat the piss out of Vergil. Now, the fight was cinematic, but not nearly as fun as Dante's fight. But it finally made Nero stand out to me. He didn't feel just like wannabe Dante. He tried to be the mediator between the two brothers who wouldn't listen to anything and have tried to kill each other over and over and over, and it felt different. A lot of the allied characters in this game refuse to communicate, refuse to plan, and just decide to kill everything willy-nilly. Nero, for a moment, took charge, told the two bickering siblings to cut it out, and mobilized them to stop the demon invasion. I finally like Nero now, and it's about time, but I'm happy it happened. He grew in a big moment of stress.
Those roots continue to spread through town. It'll just interfere with our business.
Also, I really like the callback of Lady telling Nero that he wouldn't recover from killing his own father before he decided to run up there and confront Vergil. She'd know firsthand. So yeah, my final opinion is that after having played the whole story, this is probably a close second favorite Devil May Cry game for me. It has a very standout villain in the end. It's the same one from Devil May Cry 3, but still. They have a unique relationship with two of the protagonists, being Dante's twin brother and Nero's illegitimate father? Does it work that way? DMC3 is the only one for me that might beat it, and it had Dante perfecting the art of being Dante, and Vergil is still to this day one of the best villains I've ever seen. Also Lady. Lady is pretty great. I love normal humans trying to do their best in a world of gods. She's my John McClane. It's good to see her back, especially in an outfit resembling her old one. It's a nice throwback. And really, this whole game is gorgeous. The scenery is gorgeous. The characters have nice updates to their costumes. Lady's costume feels like they took Devil May Cry 3's and made it even cooler. Trish's looks pretty much exactly the same, but that's okay. Vergil has a nice new coat that's kind of cool looking. I like the black with the light blue. It looks good. Dante looks like somebody who just can't care about his appearance much anymore, and it works for him. Nero looks pretty much the same, but that's okay. Like, he's the newest mainline character, and no, I don't count V. And so, you know, I don't expect his style to change dramatically. Well, till next time. If you enjoyed this or want to see similar things, let me know via likes or comments. Subscriptions help too. It gets us seen by more eyes and makes me feel motivated.